Okay, so are we really in the Asian century?
Well, it's a big question.
It is. And I think to kind of get into it, we should probably start with our source material today,
Sounds good.
which is Professor Kishore Mahbubani.
Right. An expert in all this.
Yeah, he was president of the UN Security Council,
Yeah.
and he wrote a book literally called The Asian 21st Century.
So he knows what he's talking about.
He does so.
Yeah.
Let's get into some of his ideas.
Yeah, let's dive in.
One of the things that he talks about in his book is this idea that Europe is having a really hard time adapting to this changing world.
Okay. Yeah, he uses the word clinging
Yeah, clinging to what, though?
to their past, to this idea that they're still superior,
Oh, so like a
they were the dominant force.
legacy kind of.
Yeah, and it's hard to let go of that.
Right.
And that makes it hard to learn from others.
Oh, interesting.
He compares it to being colonized, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, like, you can't learn from the people that you used to.
Yeah, and it's interesting because he sees ASEAN as a model.
Okay, so remind me, what is Asean again?
It's the Association of Southeast Asian Nations.
And what do they do?
They do a lot, but one of the coolest things
Yeah.
is they bring historic rivals together.
Okay, like who?
Like North and South Korea, India and Pakistan, even the US and Russia.
Wow, in the same room?
Yeah,
Okay.
having productive conversations.
So wait, that's
You can't imagine that anywhere else?
the opposite of NATO?
Yeah, Mahbubani is not a fan of NATO.
Oh, why not?
He thinks they make things worse.
Okay, how so?
Well, he says they're expansionist
Okay.
and exclusive,
Okay.
and that just creates more instability.
Instead of,
Yeah.
bringing people together.
He points to this idea of a common house of Europe that Gorbachev proposed
Right.
that never happened,
So instead of building bridges, they're building walls.
basically.
But-
But ASEAN,
Yeah.
they're not just about peace, they're also about prosperity.
Oh, right. RCEP?
Exactly, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership.
Like the biggest free trade agreement in the world.
It's huge.
And it's led by ASEAN.
Yeah.
And it includes China and Japan and South Korea and Australia.
All these big players.
Wow.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if maybe economic success
Yeah.
is a sign of a better approach to global affairs. Maybe the Asian century is more than just hype.
So it's not just about economic power,
Yeah.
but a different way of doing things.
Mhm.
A different
He calls it geopolitical competence.
geopolitical competence.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Basically, it means knowing how to navigate the world
Okay.
in a way that benefits everyone,
Okay.
understanding your own interests, but also how they connect with everyone else's.
And he thinks that ASEAN has this.
Yeah, they've mastered it.
But can that really work on a global scale?
Well, think about it. Southeast Asia has been pretty peaceful
Since when?
since the Cold War.
Wow. And a lot of people thought,
Thought it would be a disaster.
Yeah.
Full of conflict.
so maybe it is replicable.
That's the question.
That's the question.
Yeah.
Can it work on a larger scale? Can this be the model for a more stable and prosperous future?
I guess we'll have to keep digging to find out.
All right, let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll discuss that very question.
Sounds good. ASEAN success isn't just about, keeping the peace.
Right. It's about building something.
Yeah. Something more
Yeah.
sustainable. Exactly. Where cooperation isn't just like a nice idea. It's like a necessity.
So how'd they do it? How did they actually manage to get everyone on board?
Well, one thing is consensus.
Consensus.
Yeah, like they really focus on building consensus.
Okay, so everyone feels heard,
Exactly. Everyone gets a say.
which is not how a lot of other
No, not at all.
international organizations work.
Power dynamics usually win out.
Right. Someone's always calling the shots.
But in ASEAN, it's different.
Interesting. So it's like,
Yeah.
it's not just about avoiding conflict, but creating a system where
Everyone benefits.
everyone benefits. Yeah.
Which makes it more stable.
Right. And then that stability helps the economy grow.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about the economics of it all.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned RCT,
Yeah.
which is obviously a huge deal.
Huge.
But how does it actually compare to, like, the EU or NAFTA?
Well, for one, it's much broader.
Broader?
It covers more than just goods.
Okay.
It's services, investment, intellectual property, e-commerce,
So it's more comprehensive.
much more.
Okay.
And it also includes countries at very different stages of development.
Oh, right. You've got, like, China and Japan,
Powerhouses.
but then also Laos and Cambodia.
Yeah, so it's a real mix.
And that's got to be both good and bad, right?
Definitely.
Good because it makes it dynamic,
Right.
but challenging to make sure everyone benefits.
It's a balancing act.
For sure.
It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we've talked about ASEAN and how they're doing things.
Right?
But what about the other big players in Asia?
Like who?
Like China and India.
Yes, the good
Where do
stuff.
they fit into this whole Asian century thing?
Well, China is obviously a major force.
Right. Their economic growth is insane.
And Mahbubani thinks they'll only get more powerful.
But isn't that kind of scary? A lot of people in the West are worried about China.
He doesn't see it as a threat.
He doesn't?
No, he actually thinks a strong China is good for everyone.
But that assumes they'll play by the rules.
It's the current rules.
Yeah, the ones the West made.
Right. Well, he does acknowledge that things might need to change.
Also, he's not saying everything will stay the same.
No, he thinks the global power structure will have to adapt
To accommodate China.
to accommodate a multipolar world.
Okay, so like a move away from a Western-centric system,
Towards something more inclusive,
and he thinks that'll be better for everyone.
more stable, more sustainable.
But is the West willing to give up some of their power?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah, will they accept a world where they're not in charge?
It's hard to let go of power,
It is,
but Mahbubani thinks it's necessary
to avoid conflict.
to create a better future.
Okay, so we've talked about China. What about India?
India is another rising star
They've got a huge population.
and a young population.
Yeah, and a booming tech sector.
So much potential.
Mahbubani thinks they could be a superpower too,
He does.
but they've got their own problems, right?
Of course, poverty, inequality, political division.
So it's not a guaranteed success story.
No, but he sees their democracy as a strength
How so?
because it allows for different viewpoints
Okay.
and forces them to find consensus.
Which is important in a complex world.
Absolutely.
So it's not just about economics and military.
It's about the political system, too.
And he thinks India could be a model for other developing countries.
Yeah, a model for how to balance growth with democracy.
Okay, so we've covered a lot here. ASEAN, China, India.
The Asian century,
But why should our listeners care?
because it affects all of us.
Even if we don't realize it.
It impacts everything.
What we
The jobs we have,
our security.
the stability of the world,
Yeah, it's easy to think these global trends don't matter to us.
but they do.
They really do.
And we need to be aware of them
So we can adapt.
because the world is changing.
And the old rules.
Don't apply anymore.
Those who can adapt.
They'll be the ones who thrive.
It's not just about watching history happen.
It's about shaping it
Understanding the forces at play
and making choices.
to create the future we want.
That's why this conversation is so important.
It's not just about the Asian century.
It's about the future
Our future.
and the role we play in it. You know, it's interesting. Mahbubani doesn't just focus on Asia rising.
Right, he talks about the West declining too.
Yeah, which might be even harder to hear.
For sure. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of people in Europe and the U.S. are going to have trouble with that.
Definitely. It's a tough pill to swallow.
Does he really think the West is going to become, like, irrelevant?
Not irrelevant, but he does say that their dominance is fading
Okay.
and they need to find a new role.
Okay, so what does he think that role should be?
He actually suggests they should become a bridge
A bridge between...
between East and West.
Okay, so like a cultural translator almost.
Yeah, helping to build understanding.
Between these different worldviews.
Exactly.
But that would require a huge shift in mindset.
For sure.
Going from, like, I'm in charge to...
To we're partners.
Right.
It's tough.
Yeah. Is that the only way for the West to stay relevant, though?
That's what Mahbubani thinks.
Like, they could get left behind if they don't change.
It's a possibility.
And he doesn't just say this about governments and institutions either.
Right. He says this applies to individuals, too.
Oh, wow. So, like, personal responsibility.
Yeah, he wants us all to become global citizens.
What does that even mean, though?
Well, it means being open to diversity,
Okay.
learning about other cultures, new ideas,
Right.
recognizing that we're all connected.
It's not just about me. It's about us.
Exactly.
I like that. It's interesting how he links this to the big problems we're facing, too.
Right, like climate change.
Pandemics.
And
These are global issues.
they affect everyone.
And we need global solutions.
We can't solve them alone.
So back to the big question, is this the Asian century?
I don't think there's an easy answer.
It's complicated.
It is.
But we could definitely say that Asia is gaining power.
Absolutely.
And that's going to have a big impact.
Not all of us.
But the future isn't set in stone.
Right.
We still have choices to make.
As individuals, as nations.
We can shape the world we want.
That's what makes this so interesting.
Yeah, it's not just about watching things happen.
It's about making things happen.
Taking action.
So what do you think
What do I think?
about the Asian century?
I think it's a question we all need to be thinking about.
For sure.
And maybe this deep dive has given our listeners some new perspectives.
I hope so.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep engaging with the world.